Hey, so what you guys are about to see is an excerpt taken from a technique vlog that I've done. The full version, which is more than 20 minutes long, is for my patrons. That's available as a patron. If you're not yet a patron, it's very easy to become one. Just click on the link in the description below. And this is free for the public, this excerpt taken out. You can also see more public technique vlogs on YouTube. There's a playlist, you can go look at that on YouTube, and all of those have longer versions for my patrons with much more information and detail about what I'm experiencing while I'm working on those different techniques. So if you'd like to look at those, click on the link in the description below and you can see those as a patron. Ring is also doing. So on first pass, the first time you're watching one of your videos, try to relax your eyes in terms of who you're watching. Try to watch both of you a little bit. Try to figure out how the movement between the two of you is working. Are you going backwards a lot? Are you coming forward a lot? Are they goading you forward, or are you being pushed back by their pressure? Just look at general shapes in terms of what is dictating the movement in this fight. And that'll give you a template for being able to watch yourself where you're not nitpicking every little thing that you're doing. You're watching it kind of in a broad, if you're looking at a painting, you look at the whole thing first, right? You see where the light's coming from, you look at the colors that are being used, really broad way of respecting that art. And then the more you look at it, the more you go into it, you're gonna see the brush strokes and the details and the content and things like that. So when you're watching yourself, if you've filmed a fight of yours, or if you're watching it sparring, I recommend on first pass, just kind of look at the general movement shape of what is happening in the fight as though you're watching someone who's not you. If you're watching someone who you don't know on TV, you're not cheering for your friend, you're not a Rotong fan, so you're not watching Rotong only. If you're watching two fighters you don't know, you watch both of them somewhat equally, and then someone kind of draws your eye a little bit because you do or don't like their style. Try to watch it a little bit more generalized on your first pass. Proximity and space and things like this. First pass. On a first pass, if you're not super experienced in watching tape and you don't really know how to watch that dynamic of spacing between the fighters and what's happening there, just find the good things you did. Only the good things. On your first watch, only find the good things. You can say them out loud with a friend, watch them with your friend, and be like, oh man, that was a really good kick. Or oh, I really like how I'm pushing in on her there. Or oh, I really dodged that well. Only good things. I know it's very hard to only find good things. Your brain will try to find the bad things at the same time. You'll be like, oh, I'm just being balanced. Think of it this way. If someone has a bunch of box of crayons and they throw them all on the ground and they're only pick up the green ones, you do not also have to pick up the blue ones just because you see them. Only pick up the green crayons, okay? You're capable of doing this when you watch it. Only verbally announce and try to pick up on the good things you did in that fight. On your next pass, when you watch it a second time, then you can kind of start looking at things that you think you could do better, things that were small mistakes. Do not go into this I never kick, I never land that punch. Do not make generalities like this. Be specific about, I missed that kick, and then look at why you maybe missed that kick. Again, don't only watch yourself when you're watching tape. Look at what your opponent was doing. Why did you miss that kick? Were they standing farther away from you than your kick could reach? Did they lean back? Did they look like they were going to go to the right and then they actually went to the left? Were you afraid of them? Were they kind of intimidating you and so you didn't take the step that you wanted to do? I don't film myself on pads and stuff like this, but as someone who does film my sparring, it was helpful for me because I film every single one of my fights and I'd be like, oh, I'm doing this thing in fights, and now that I watch my sparring, I'm like, oh shit, I do that. I do that in sparring too. It just doesn't feel the same because I'm not thinking about it and I'm not watching it afterwards. So there are consistencies between those two that you might not be aware of. And again, being able to kind of draw those two closer and closer together. So if you see something that you're doing in fights and you feel like you're not doing it in training, film your training to see whether you're doing it. And then if you really aren't doing it in training also, the same way that I was saying watching tape of yourself in a fight and being like, when is this not happening? Figure out why it's not happening in your training if it is happening in fights. My pad man stands closer to me than my opponents do. My sparring partner is shorter than most of my opponents are, or that my last opponent was, things like this. You really want to be looking at details in terms of what is creating the context for these things that you're disappointed in your fight or in your training when you're watching and you're finding problems with that. Once you've zeroed in on all of these like different, what they copy? Once you've zeroed in on these things that are kind of details that you find really annoying about what you're doing or that you want to change, when you go to change them, try to recreate some of those situations that you were seeing in your fight. So if you're missing your kicks, like you're just kicking air because the person is farther away from you, when you go back to your training, try to make someone stand farther away from you. Have your pad man farther away so that you really have to step to get that kick. So the reason that you watched something and found a problem in it, be accountable to that when you take it back to your training, and being able to fix those things, because you can't fix something in a vacuum. You have to fix it trying to recreate some of the conditions that when you watched that tape, you figured out when are you not doing this, or when are you having difficulty with this. And again, after you've done all of these like detailed viewings, take your eyes and pull them back again. So you've watched and you've found things that are great that you're doing. You've watched and you've found things that you want to get better at that you're doing.